She asked you a question on a random Tuesday night, something small, almost forgettable. What would you do if I left? You laughed. You said something reassuring. You moved on to the next sentence without a second thought. She did not move on. She remembers that exact moment, months later, the way you remember the sound of glass breaking. Because that was not a question. That was a test. And you failed it in under 4 seconds without ever knowing a test had been given. Most men go their entire lives never learning this language. They think love is loud. They think loyalty is proven through grand gestures, through the ring, through the vacation, through the things that can be photographed and shown to other people. She was never testing any of that. She was testing something far quieter, and far more dangerous to get wrong. Whether you would hold your center when the ground beneath the relationship shifted, even slightly, even for a moment. By the end of this, you will understand exactly what she was really asking that night. And you will understand why the answer you gave, without meaning to, told her something you never intended to say. Here is the truth almost no man is taught, and the one that changes everything once you finally hear it. A woman does not fall for the man who chases hardest. She falls for the man who does not need to. Sit with that. Because everything you think you know about winning her over is about to be rebuilt from the ground up. Somewhere in your own life is a version of that Tuesday night question, disguised as something else. A slow reply she gave you once. A plan she made without checking with you first. A moment she pulled back, just slightly, and you felt the floor shift beneath something you thought was solid. You may not have recognized it as a test in the moment. Almost no man does. But your body remembers it, the same tightening in the chest, the same reach for your phone, the same quiet spiral of a story your mind built out of almost nothing. Go back further, to the night they met, because the beginning of this story explains everything that came after it. He was not trying to impress her that night. He was simply being himself, unbothered, unhurried, talking to her the way he talked to everyone else in the room. She noticed that. Not consciously, not in words she could have said out loud at the time, but somewhere underneath, she registered that this man did not need anything from her. That absence of need was the entire attraction. It always is. Confidence is not a costume a man puts on to impress a woman. It is the natural state of a man who has already made peace with himself, with or without her approval in the room. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in the quiet of his own tent, that a man is defined not by what happens to him but by how he holds himself while it happens. He was writing about war. He did not know it, but he was also writing about every relationship a man would ever try to hold on to too tightly. The men who chase are not chasing love. They are chasing certainty. They want the reassurance locked in, permanently, so the fear inside them can finally go quiet. And she can feel that hunger from across a room, the same way an animal can feel a storm before the sky changes color. Neediness is not romantic. It is loud. And underneath the loudness is a signal she reads instantly, whether she could explain it in words or not. This man needs me more than he trusts himself. Think back to a time you texted twice because the first one did not get a reply fast enough. Think about the small ache that lived in your chest during those minutes of silence, the way your mind built entire stories out of nothing but a delayed reply bubble. That ache was not about her. That ache was a wound from somewhere much older than this relationship, showing up uninvited, wearing her name. There was a man, not so different from you, who learned this the hard way. He gave everything, early and fast. Attention, reassurance, plans for a future she had not yet earned the right to hear about. He believed generosity would prove his worth. Instead, it did the opposite. It told her, without a single word spoken aloud, that his sense of self depended on her staying. And the moment she sensed that dependency, some quiet, ancient part of her pulled back, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Because a woman is not looking for a man to complete. She is looking for a man already complete, who chooses to walk beside her anyway. If you have ever felt that ache in your chest waiting on a reply, type "I know that ache" in the comments below. Not for her. For the part of you that is finally ready to understand where it actually comes from. 6 months into the relationship, something shifted, the way it always does once comfort settles in and the early performance of a first impression wears away. He started letting the mask slip. Not intentionally. Slowly. A little more checking her phone activity. A little more asking where she had been, who she had been with, why the reply took longer than usual. She did not pull away because he had done anything wrong in the traditional sense. He had never lied. He had never cheated. He simply started needing her to prove, over and over, that she still wanted to stay. And a woman can smell that need the way smoke fills a room long before anyone sees the fire. Epictetus taught something that sounds almost cruel until you understand it fully. He said that we suffer not from events themselves, but from the meaning we assign to them. Apply that to the silence after a text. The silence is neutral. It is simply time passing. The meaning you assign to it, "She does not like me anymore, I have already lost this," is entirely constructed inside your own mind, built from fear, not from fact. A grounded man does not interrogate silence. He lets it exist. He continues living his life with the same intensity and purpose he had before the message was sent, because his peace was never actually dependent on how quickly she replies. This is not a technique. This is not something you perform to trick her into staying. The moment it becomes performance, she will feel that too, the same way she felt the neediness before. This has to be real. It has to come from a man who has genuinely done the internal work of separating his worth from her attention. Here is where the story turns. The man who learned to walk away from that ache, slowly, painfully, over months of catching himself and correcting course, began to notice something strange happening. She started reaching first. She started asking the questions he used to ask, the questions born of a quiet fear that he might not need her the way she had grown used to being needed. He did not manipulate this into happening. He simply stopped performing need, and in its absence, something real had space to grow. Desire, real desire, cannot breathe in a room already flooded with reassurance. It needs a little air. It needs a man secure enough to leave that air in the room instead of rushing to fill every silence with proof of his devotion. There is a particular kind of jealousy that has nothing to do with her actions and everything to do with a man's own insecurity, wearing the disguise of protectiveness. He tells himself he is simply paying attention. In reality, he is scanning for the evidence that will finally confirm the fear he has been carrying long before he ever met her. Every man who has ever felt his stomach tighten watching her laugh at another man's joke knows this feeling. The question is not whether the feeling arrives. It will. The question is what a man does with it once it does. The undisciplined man lets the feeling drive his behavior. He gets quiet, or worse, he gets sharp, and she spends the rest of the night managing his mood instead of enjoying her own evening. The disciplined man feels the exact same tightness in his chest and simply does not hand her the bill for it. He processes it internally, privately, the way Seneca processed his own anger, by waiting before reacting, by refusing to let a passing feeling dictate a permanent decision. There is a modern version of this test that the old philosophers never had to face, though the underlying weakness is exactly the same one they wrote about 2,000 years ago. A notification appears. She has liked a photo, commented on a post, and the man watching it happen feels something twist in his chest that has nothing to do with what actually occurred and everything to do with the story he immediately builds around it. He opens the profile. He studies the comment history. He constructs an entire narrative from a single heart-shaped icon, and by the time he has finished scrolling, he has convicted her of something she never did, based on evidence that was never actually evidence at all. This is not protectiveness. This is a man outsourcing his sense of security to a screen, checking it the way an addict checks a supply, needing one more hit of reassurance that nothing has changed since the last time he looked. And the exhausting part is that no amount of checking will ever be enough, because the fear was never actually about the notification. The notification was simply the latest surface the old wound found to bleed onto. The grounded man sees the same notification and lets it pass through him without incident, not because he does not notice it, but because he has trained himself to recognize the difference between a fact and a fear dressed up as a fact. A liked photo is not evidence of anything except that a photo was liked. Everything else is a story, and a disciplined man refuses to convict anyone, including himself, on a story he invented in the space of 4 seconds. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius about a different kind of loss, the loss of possessions, but the principle bends perfectly toward this. He said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of what a man fears losing in a relationship, he has already lost 100 times over in his own mind, long before anything has actually happened. You have already imagined the breakup. You have already rehearsed the version where she leaves for someone else, where the silence means the worst thing it could possibly mean. And you have suffered through that imagined ending dozens of times, while she was simply living her life, unaware that you had already buried the relationship in your own head out of fear. Stop rehearsing endings that have not happened. The energy you spend imagining loss is energy stolen directly from the presence that would actually keep her close. If that rehearsed ending sounds familiar, type "stop rehearsing" in the comments. A reminder that most of what you fear has already cost you more in your own mind than it would ever cost you in reality. There is a particular kind of test almost no man recognizes when it happens, because it does not look like a test. It looks like distance. She pulls back, slightly, for reasons she may not even fully understand herself. And the man who chases that distance, who escalates his effort the moment he feels her step back, fails without knowing a test was ever given. The man who holds his ground, who continues showing up as the same grounded, self-possessed presence regardless of her temperature that week, passes a test he never consciously took. Not because he outsmarted her. Because he was simply being the man she was drawn to in the first place, undisturbed by her momentary distance. This is not coldness. Do not mistake detachment for indifference. The Stoics were never teaching men to stop caring. They were teaching men to care without being enslaved by the outcome. You can love her fully and still refuse to let her mood decide your internal state for the day. Those two things are not in conflict. In fact, one makes the other possible. A man who needs her calm to feel calm himself has handed her the keys to his entire nervous system. That is not love. That is dependency wearing love's clothing, and she can feel the difference even when she cannot name it out loud. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that other people's actions and moods are not his to control, only his own reaction is. Apply this the next time she is short with you after a long day. Her mood is not a referendum on your worth. It is weather passing through her, and a grounded man does not rearrange his entire day around someone else's weather. There came a night in this story that nearly ended everything. A disagreement, small at first, about something neither of them would remember clearly a year later, that spiraled the way small disagreements do when two tired people stop listening and start defending. She said something sharp. He felt the old instinct rise, the urge to match her intensity, to prove his point, to win a conversation that was never actually about winning. He caught himself instead. He said less than he wanted to say. He let the silence sit in the room without rushing to fill it with justification. And in that silence, something changed. She watched him hold his ground without attacking her back, without collapsing into apology either, simply standing steady in the middle of the storm. That single choice, made in under a minute, did more for the relationship than 100 grand gestures could have. Because she did not need him to win the argument. She needed to see, with her own eyes, that he would not fall apart or lash out when things got hard. That is what safety actually looks like to a woman who has been let down before, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of a man who stays whole through it. The story of the man who learned this did not end with a perfect relationship free of conflict. It ended with something better. A relationship where conflict no longer detonated his entire sense of self. Where a bad night did not mean a doomed future. Where her distance, when it came, was met with steadiness instead of panic, and that steadiness, more than any gesture or gift he had ever given her before, was what finally made her feel safe enough to stop testing him altogether. Because that is the secret buried underneath every test she has ever given you, knowingly or not. She is not looking for proof that you love her. She is looking for proof that you will not fall apart when love gets difficult. That you are a man whose center holds, regardless of what she brings into the room on any given day. If you have ever won an argument and lost something far more important in the process, type "I understand now" in the comments below. Let that be the moment you stop keeping score in conversations that were never meant to have a winner. Build that center now, deliberately, the way the old teachers built it. Not by loving her less. By needing her validation less, so that what remains, when you finally do show up for her, is choice instead of desperation. And there is nothing more attractive to a woman than a man who chooses her, freely, from a place of wholeness, rather than a man who clings to her because he has nowhere else to stand. None of this is built overnight, and it is worth saying plainly so you do not expect a single video to undo years of pattern in a single sitting. The man in this story did not transform in a week. He caught himself failing more times than he succeeded, early on, and the only thing that separated him from a man who gives up on the work entirely was his willingness to keep catching himself, again and again, without using the failure as proof that the effort was pointless. Character is not built in the moments that feel good. It is built in the repeated, unglamorous choice to respond differently than instinct demands, on an ordinary Tuesday, when no one is watching and there is no reward waiting on the other side except the quiet knowledge that you chose the harder, truer path instead of the easier, familiar one. There is a quieter test that happens in the ordinary moments most men rush past without noticing, the evenings with no conflict at all, no notification to react to, nothing to prove. Just two people sitting in the same room. And in that stillness, a woman is reading something a man rarely realizes he is broadcasting, whether he is fully present with her, or whether some part of him is still elsewhere, distracted, restless, unable to simply exist in a moment that is asking nothing of him except attention. The man who cannot sit in silence with her, who reaches for his phone the moment a conversation lulls, who treats stillness as something to escape rather than something to share, is telling her, without a single word, that his peace requires stimulation, and that he has not yet made peace with simply being. She feels the difference between a man who is present because he chooses to be and a man who is merely occupying space while his attention lives somewhere else entirely. Presence, real presence, is one of the rarest things a man can offer, precisely because it cannot be faked for long. It requires a man who has done enough internal work that stillness no longer feels like a threat. The old teachers called this the practice of attention, giving your full mind to the thing directly in front of you, rather than splitting it endlessly between what already happened and what might happen next. This does not mean withholding affection to manufacture desire. That is manipulation wearing this teaching's clothing, and it will eventually collapse under its own dishonesty. This means becoming, genuinely, a man secure enough that affection flows from abundance rather than fear. The difference is invisible on the surface and unmistakable underneath it, and she will always be able to tell which one she is standing in front of. There is a test that happens in front of other people, one that most men fail without ever realizing an audience was watching. Her friends make a joke about him, gentle, harmless, the kind every group makes about the newest addition to their circle. And he laughs along, easily, without needing to defend himself, without needing the room to see him as anything other than exactly who he already is. Contrast that with the man who bristles at every joke, who needs to correct the narrative the moment it drifts even slightly away from how he wants to be seen. She watches both versions of a man across a dinner table more times than either of them will ever admit, and she is quietly taking notes the entire time, filing away evidence for a verdict she has not consciously decided to reach. The secure man does not need her friends to like him. He is simply himself, and if they like him, that is a pleasant byproduct, not a requirement he is anxiously chasing across the table. That distinction, invisible to him, is deafening to her. There was an afternoon, early in the relationship, when he met her family for the first time, and he felt the old performance instinct rise immediately, the urge to impress, to say the right things, to be liked by people whose opinion of him would shape how comfortable she felt bringing him into the rest of her life. He caught himself reaching for approval instead of simply being himself, and he made a quiet decision in that kitchen doorway before he ever walked through it. He would be exactly who he already was, and let the chips fall wherever they fell. Her mother, sharp-eyed the way mothers often are, noticed something in him that afternoon that had nothing to do with his job or his manners. She noticed that he did not flinch when her father asked a pointed question about his plans. She noticed that he did not oversell himself, did not perform confidence he had not actually built. Later that night, she told her daughter something simple. He seems like a man who knows who he is. That single observation carried more weight than any charm offensive could have manufactured, because it could not be faked, only demonstrated. This is the pattern repeating itself in a new setting. Every room a man walks into with her is another opportunity to either perform for approval or simply exist as himself and let approval follow or not, indifferent to the outcome either way. The rooms where he performed hardest were, without exception, the rooms where he was liked least. People, much like she herself had done from the very beginning, can feel the difference between a man seeking validation and a man simply present. He carried something into this relationship that had nothing to do with her. A past betrayal, from someone else, years earlier, that had taught him to watch for the exit sign the moment things felt too good to be true. He did not tell her this directly. He showed it instead, in the questions he asked, in the small tests he ran without calling them tests, in the way he flinched at closeness he had not yet learned to trust. She felt this long before he ever explained it. And for a while, she absorbed it, tried to prove herself worthy of a trust that was never actually about her, trying to pay down a debt someone else had left behind in his heart. This is the quiet cruelty of unhealed wounds. They do not stay in the past. They walk into every new room a man enters, uninvited, and they make the people who love him pay interest on a debt they never took out. Epictetus taught that a man must examine what belongs to him and what does not. That old wound belongs to him. It is his work to heal, not hers to constantly prove around. He eventually did the work. Not because she demanded it, though she had every right to. Because he finally saw what the pattern was costing them both, and he refused to let a woman who had done nothing wrong keep paying for a debt from a different chapter of his life entirely. If you have ever made someone new pay for what someone old did to you, type "I see the pattern" in the comments below. Naming it is the first step toward finally putting it down. No man passes every test. There will be a night he fails badly, says the sharp thing he cannot take back, lets the old insecurity win instead of the discipline he has been building. What separates a man who is doing the work from a man who is only performing it is not the absence of failure. It is what he does in the minutes immediately after. The undisciplined man defends the failure, explains it away, makes it her fault for provoking a reaction that was always his to control. The disciplined man owns it plainly, without collapsing into excessive apology and without minimizing what actually happened. He says the true thing. That was not who I want to be with you, and I am not going to pretend otherwise to make this easier on either of us. That kind of ownership, rare as it is, tends to repair more damage in a single honest sentence than weeks of careful avoidance ever could. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it is not shameful to be corrected, only shameful to persist in an error out of stubbornness. A woman does not need a flawless man. She needs a man secure enough to admit the flaw without making her responsible for managing his shame about it afterward. There is a version of this story that ends differently, and it is worth telling honestly, because not every test is passed, and not every relationship survives a man's failure to hold his own center. Somewhere in nearly every man's past is a woman he loved and lost, not to another man, not to circumstance, but to his own inability to separate his worth from her presence. He drove away exactly what he was most afraid of losing, by gripping it too tightly to breathe. That loss, painful as it was, became the exact education this entire video is built around. Some men learn the lesson only after paying full price for it. If you are hearing this before that price comes due, consider it the rare kind of mercy that does not usually arrive until after the damage is already done. There was a stretch of months when work pulled them apart geographically, different cities, a screen standing in for a presence that used to be effortless. Distance has a way of finding whatever cracks already existed and widening them until they can no longer be ignored. He noticed, during those months, how easy it would have been to let his attention drift toward the easy validation of someone new, someone closer, someone who required none of the patience distance demands. He did not do that, not because temptation never appeared, but because he had already done the deeper work of knowing what he actually valued, rather than chasing whatever novelty happened to be nearest at hand. The old teachers wrote often about the difference between what is pleasant in the moment and what is genuinely good for a man over the full arc of his life. Novelty is pleasant. It rarely survives contact with a man's actual values once the initial excitement fades. She, unaware of the private test he was passing on his own, simply experienced the steadiness of a man who called when he said he would call, who showed up fully present on a screen the same way he had shown up in the same room, who treated the distance as an inconvenience to be managed rather than an opportunity to be exploited. That steadiness, sustained across months without an audience to witness it, told her more about his character than anything he had ever said directly to her face. Years down this road, long after the early tests have quieted into something steadier, a different kind of question arrives. Not what would you do if I left, but something softer, something that only gets asked once a woman has decided a man is safe enough to build a life around. Where do you see this going? The man who spent those early months chasing reassurance instead of building character has nothing solid to offer here. He has spent his energy proving he would not leave, instead of becoming a man worth staying for. The man who did the quieter work, who built his center first, answers this question the same way he answered every test before it. Not with panic. Not with a scripted promise designed to soothe her in the moment. With the calm certainty of a man who has already decided who he is, independent of her answer, and who is choosing this future because he wants it, not because he is afraid of losing her if he hesitates. What is easy to miss in a story told from a man's side is that she was doing her own work the entire time, in rooms he never saw, learning her own lessons about what safety actually required of her. She had been taught, by her own past, that men eventually reveal themselves as either steady or unsteady once the initial performance of dating wears away. She had watched that unsteadiness in men before him, felt the particular exhaustion of being someone's emotional anchor instead of someone's partner. Watching him hold his ground, night after night, choice after small choice, was not just attractive to her. It was healing. It rewired something in her that years of unsteady men had built, a low-grade vigilance she had carried into every relationship since she was young, always waiting for the version of a man who needed managing instead of the version who could simply stand on his own. He never knew, most of the time, that his steadiness was doing that work for her, quietly, in the background, one ordinary evening at a time. This is worth understanding fully, because it reframes everything this video has described. A man who builds his own center is not simply protecting himself from heartbreak. He is offering the single rarest gift he can give another person, the experience of being loved by someone who does not require managing. That gift cannot be purchased, cannot be faked convincingly for long, and cannot be given by a man who has not first given it to himself. That is the entire arc, from the first test on a random Tuesday night to the quiet, settled years that follow, if a man does the work. Not becoming a different person for her. Becoming, finally, fully himself, and discovering that the self she was drawn to in the first place was never a performance to begin with. This week, notice the next moment your chest tightens over something small. A slow reply. A plan made without you. A distance you cannot fully explain. Do not reach for your phone to fix it. Sit in it instead, for one full minute, and ask yourself honestly whether the story you are building is fact or fear wearing fact's clothing. That single minute of restraint, practiced consistently, is the entire discipline this story has been describing from the very first sentence. She asked you that question on a random Tuesday night. What would you do if I left? You know the answer now, the one you should have given, the one that was never really about her leaving at all. I would still know exactly who I am. That is the answer that ends the testing. Not because she stops testing you. Because you finally stop failing, without even realizing there was ever a test to begin with. If this reached you, if you recognized yourself somewhere in this story, type still whole in the comments below, and subscribe. Not for her. So the next time doubt creeps in during a silence that means nothing, you have a place to come back to and remember exactly who you already are.